Hello everyone, I am Duke and welcome to the FeelNoPaint podcast. And today we are joined by probably one of your favorite YouTubers in the Trench Crusade space. He inspired me in my own works to start YouTube and to start some of my own short stories. So please welcome Scanner Barclay. I think that's enough from me, Scanner. I'll hand over to yourself, and can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, what you've done in the past, and how you started in Trench Crusade?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. It's interesting to be introduced as potentially anybody's favorite anything. That's been the most interesting aspect of Trench Crusade for me, to be honest. I've done YouTube for about 12 years at this point, but I always angled to keep things small. I was doing it as a means to feel a little bit creative and to learn some new skills. Like learning all about video editing and video scripting and even pacing and things like that is stuff that's helped me in my professional life, which is quite nice. And yeah, it's just been fun. And then when Trench Crusade hit, I kind of pivoted to doing content about that. Of course, now my cat decides to start freaking out. When Trench Crusade hit, I pivoted over and started doing stuff about that. I'm old, basically. That's the first part of my story. I started playing wargames, specifically the Games Workshop adjacent product in the 80s. And Hero Quest and Space Crusade and things of that nature were my first forays into it. And from there, I went into Second Edition and Fantasy Battle, Necromunda Mordheim, Inquisitor, Battlefleet Gothic, like the whole gamut of Warhammer stuff when I was younger. I really had a strong interest in other things like Warzone Mutant Chronicles and games like that. But like in Ireland in the 80s and 90s, you couldn't get that shit. Like it wasn't in stock anywhere. So I was playing the available product. And I think like most people, I've fallen in and out of the hobby over the course of my life. There's times when you're very switched on to it. There's times when you're very switched off of it. It really all depends on what you're up to. But all said and done, probably been wargaming for about 35 years on and off. And what got me into Trench Crusade specifically was the first Kickstarter. Just happened to come across my Twitter account one day. I saw I think what for a lot of people was the big moment was seeing the communicant. Yeah, anti-tank communicant. Yes, right. And just going, oh, that's it. That's the one. I'm going to buy that. I supported the Kickstarter, got the minis, did a video, just like breaking down the minis, talking about the sculpts and liking them. And that did really well. And I thought maybe there's something on this Trench Crusade thing. And I've always liked lore. I've always liked writing. I always felt like I had missed the boat a little bit on other things for being on the ground as regards covering lore, and started covering it and then started doing a bit of my own writing. And now we're here.
You mentioned about you mentioned about sort of breaking down the minis and stuff like that. And I'm a massive fan of kit bashing. And I've been painting for quite a number of years now, and I'm starting to get a little bit okay. Is there any minis that you want to sort of showcase? Is there anything you're working on at the moment that you might have kit bash made or you're painting and you want to talk about? I know you were on your live stream the other day doing a sorcerer. How's that going along?
Yeah, no, it's going quite nicely. It's basically done. My painting has taken a little bit of a back seat over the last couple of months almost. It's just been an odd run of time for me, as we've gone from the 2 months where it's just too cold to 3D print. Here, I do all my 3D printing in a shed outside because I'm not having those fumes in the house. Yeah. So over Christmas, too cold to print, really. I got a batch of Heretics done. I got some Quart done before it got too cold. So they've been keeping me going. And then I just foolishly took like this very, very stressful, pressing 2-month job that I'm just wrapping up this week. So that's been dominating my time as well. So I guess I can talk about impotentia with regards to painting, which is the second I get a chance that 3D printer is back up and running. And I think I'm going to just dive face first into doing I've got an absolute obsession with painting the Black Grail, which I really want to do. So I'm going to print those up and just get them out. And the order I'll probably go through will be Black Grail, finish the court, wrap the Heretics, do New Antioch, then the Sultanate, and then the Pilgrims. And if I can get all those done over the space of like 2 months, I would be absolutely ecstatic, because I don't plan on working very much after this current job is wrapped.
No, fair. I've been taking quite a lot of annual leave from work at the back end of this year. The back end of last year and start of this. So I've ended up with a little bit of free time, and I got back to my painting table. And I think I've got a little competition between a couple of painter friends of mine to see who can paint the most minis each year. And I think I'm on about 41 as of now. Should be 60 something by then. Yeah, and I've fully finished a fieldable New Antioch force. The Iron Sultanate's House of Wisdom detachment is coming along nicely. Pilgrims I'm painting up for painting competitions, and Black Grail I've sculpted myself, so I'm looking forward to painting them. I've got 5 warbands now. There's too many. It's becoming out. Oh yeah, I'm well set up, and I've got sculpting projects coming along and charity projects, which, to be honest, I didn't think about asking you about this before, but I'd quite like to talk to you about a charity project I've got coming up later this year, but we'll talk about it in private and not take up too much room in this podcast. I want the focus to be on you. So you mentioned that you'd like to work on a full timeline video with fancy graphics. So can I take into that we might be getting the first fan animation in Trench Crusade? A bit of Starties like, but not quite there, if that makes sense. Or is it something different?
No, this would be something different. It's actually an interesting question, because I've had a couple of conversations with people. The timeline thing is just going to be more of a, in like World War I documentaries where you've got the like sliding timeline of, 1912, this happened. And I want to do something like that. And that's pretty easy to do, because there's some pretty good like templates out there on the various websites that I use to source that kind of stuff. I have talked to a couple of animators about the potential for a Starty style project, because I'm just really interested in potentially doing it. The cost of that is a lot.
It is.
Like I was talking to people, and it was in the region of like $2,000 to $3,000 a minute, or a good quality 2D animation. I'm just trying to, I think 2D is the way to go for. Yeah, I think 3D would be a mistake for Trench Crusade. I think with Trench Crusade, you want to go more anime than video game with it.
Know what? Yeah, the point with that. Yeah, a bit berserk.
Yeah, I think that'd be. Yeah, I think that'd be the way to go. So I've actually been talking to people about doing a project like that, but the financials of it are delicate. So it'll be some time before I personally get around to doing anything like that. Now, there could be people out in the community working on that kind of project, in which case, go for it. Everybody should explore Trench Crusade as their creativity takes them. And I'd love to see some animated stuff.
I would as well. And I've been talking to a couple of graphic designers for some graphics for videos, and some artwork, original pieces, nothing animated, but it'd be cool to see someone like yourself tackle an animated 2D kind of style series, with a Hand of Fate, maybe that becomes an anime series in the future. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I just want to go back to the comment you made when we started this, when you said it feels really weird to be noted as someone's favorite of anything. So I wonder how you respond to some people in the community calling you the Luton of Trench Crusade. How has that made you feel when you see sort of comments like that?
That's actually really funny because the world is a small place, and I actually used to know Luton a little bit back in the day in the Battlefield 3 community. We were both just doing our thing, I guess, in Battlefield 3, and we had, shared friends, and we'd play the odd game together and things like that. And, he was always a very good guy. And I always knew he had this large interest in Warhammer, because from time to time he would do videos on it back then. And then to see him turn that passion into such super high quality videos, and to have them do so incredibly well, you can't help but be happy for the guy. And the fact that people would think I'd have a similar place in the Trench Crusade community, at least when it comes to being a voice of the lore. And ultimately, whilst I'm doing a lot of my own writing in my short stories, I try to respect the lore. I think that's what's really apparent about Luton's work, is he really respects the lore and the canon that he's discussing. It's pretty cool. It's weird, just because life is weird and coincidental in strange ways, but it's very cool, and I see it as a huge compliment.
Yeah, I think that's, like I say, it is really strange, and I've noticed since coming into YouTube, I only started 4 months ago. It's a very small space, very small. There aren't many steps between a newer person coming into the content creation and someone like yourself, and then further on from you to someone like Luton, or someone possibly even bigger than him. In the Warhammer hobby space, there aren't many people bigger than Luton at the moment, though. And certainly not for lore. He is the channel. I think he's approaching 1 million now. So it'd be nice when we get the first person over that 1 million line for subs in Warhammer. Anyway, we're here to talk about Trench Crusade. So, looking at your Hand of Fate series, what inspired you to do that? And do you have any tips for people who, like other Trench Crusade fans, who want to write their own stories in the setting?
Ultimately, I've just always written. I've always been somebody who makes up stories in my head. I guess I fancy myself as a bit of a fan of. I've always read a lot. I've always enjoyed movies and games and breaking down narrative and talking about what I think makes a story good or bad. And I think you can only talk for so long before you actually have to shit or get off the pot a little bit. And Trench Crusade just fit nicely in my head as a world that I found was interesting. Now, maybe it's my lapsed Catholic nature or whatever, but just exploring that concept. And I've always enjoyed a juxtaposition of individualized faith versus organized religion. And Trench Crusade allows me to explore that, which is fun. I think it's pretty obvious based off what I'm writing in Hand of Faith. My heroes that I write, that I create, they have a very strong personal faith. it doesn't really matter what they believe in or who, but it's very strong. And attacking them at that point is where it's going to get really interesting for me. So
Yeah.
that's, I've spent 3 installments now building up the idea that these people, the rough and readies, have this strong sense of faith. And now I want to get after it, really, truly put them in the shit and see where it goes. So obviously that as a kind of, you can go to Gaunt's Ghosts, or that kind of a story, but Gaunt's Ghosts is the iteration rather than the origin, and I'm sadly old enough to have been inspired by the origin, like the Dirty Dozen and the Magnificent Seven and all that, just those idealized team concepts of something really hard has to be done. There's a coincidentally highly skilled group of people who just might be able to do it. Let's see how that plays out. And even the Biggles books, when I was a kid and I was reading them, that concept of the and a stiff upper lip, it's going to be hard, but you just got to do it hero. And there's a good bit of that in Schroll. So for people who want to do it themselves, I would just say do it. There's 2 things you can write. You can either write a story or you can write a list of excuses. Either way you're writing, so you might as well write the story. And it might not be good. God knows they're often not good. Even now, I think people think I'm a good writer, but I don't think people comprehend how much stuff I throw away. How much stuff gets like deleted and reworked and rethought and all the rest of it. I guarantee you that's the same for anybody, no matter how good or bad they are. It's a process you got to figure out for yourself, and you're never going to do that if you don't start. So just start. Give yourself the opportunity to surprise yourself.
I think that was one big thing that I took away from yourself and a couple of other YouTubers that I follow is that, do you know what? Why aren't I doing this? And why aren't I taking that leap for myself? I'm glad I did. It's been an incredibly wild ride. And I have to thank you personally for the inspiration behind some of the stuff that I do. Certainly with the Hand of Fate series inspiring my own, and the interest that I gained for the Trench Crusade verse through your videos, as I'm sure for a lot of people in the hobby. Your work is clearly well thought out. It's clearly well written. And as you say, you may throw away a lot of things, and maybe sometimes you throw away a good idea, but you're out there and you're putting the work out there for people to enjoy. And however that happens, however they enjoy it, and however you write it, it's all contributing to the community at the end of the day, and it's all good. It's all a positive when I can get my words out. So we spoke in a private chat before we came onto the podcast today, and you mentioned about wanting to do spin-off series for characters in Hand of Fate. Are these characters that we might have seen before? So could it be characters like Troll getting a backstory for him, or are there spin-off series for characters coming up that we haven't seen yet? How far down the road of the Hand of Fate series are you really aware of where the story's going?
I know exactly where it's going. I think I know how it ends. I know where it ends, is what I will say. I don't know how it ends just yet. I've got like 4 or 5 different ways the story can go, depending on how we choose to get there. These spin-offs will be, I think, like all good TV right now, there'll be a degree of ambiguity as to what period in a person's life it is that we're witnessing. Is it before or after the current adventures? It'll be hard to tell sometimes. Other times it'll be like super obvious. It might be the first time, characters met, or it might be Schroll recruiting them. The one I'm working on right now, as a bit of a teaser for people, is about Burke. And he will like basically 1v1 something very scary. And the story is because I think he's that guy. I think he's the person you can write into that situation where he can battle against something very, very scary. And because he's so big and he's this like powerful presence, and I want people to understand the character more than they currently do. Ironically, I want people to see beyond the fact that he's just like a big time brawler. And the best way to do that is actually put him in a brawl. And how he thinks and how he is reacting to that will be what grows the character in their mind. If that makes any kind of sense. Like, what am I going to do? Put him in a classroom with a physics book and be like, look, he's actually kind of smart. That's not going to work. So yeah, it'll be all kinds of things, and nothing is off the table. I regularly kind of wake up in the middle of the night and just there's an idea in my head, so I just write it down in my little ideas book, and then I might come back to it later.
It's funny you mentioned little ideas books. How many books since starting with Trench Crusade have you got lying around? Like, I'm holding one now. There's about 750 pages I've gone through of lore. I imagine you do it the smart way and you do it on the actual computer and not, destroying the Ents. But, I seem to have taken the war to the Ents, and I don't want to find the side of Isengard, but a lot of trees have gone into my work so far.
Yeah, no, same. I think so I do both. I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night and screen.
Yeah.
It's a bad idea, so I resist the urge to go for the phone or turn on the computer. So I have my notebooks, but then during the day when I'm actually doing my work, I use this thing called Scrivener, which is like a writing program. Now it's really just a way to organize and type in the same program.
Yeah.
Which I find very, very useful. And yeah, that's how most of my organization is done. But there's constant ideas, and the problem I run into, and maybe you do too, is stemming the flow long enough to focus on something can be quite tough. That's why people ask me a lot, like, oh, would you write a book and stuff? It's like, yeah, if I could write a book, I'd have written it. Like, writing a book is a skill, and it's a skill learned through discipline and practice in the steps required to write a book. I'm at the point now where I'm writing short stories, and the fact that those short stories continue to exist within the same shared universe is progress for me. So do I want to write a book? I would love to write a book. That'd be amazing. But right now, it's just idea brain and getting stuff out and trying to build cool things in an interesting way that the reader maybe doesn't see coming.
Yeah.
And polishing my skills as a writer. Like, I need to be a writer to write a book. I don't even think I'm a writer yet. So,
one of those things, isn't it? You're getting the reps in, you're getting the practice down by doing the short stories, and all of a sudden 10 short stories become I think we lost your camera. We had 10 short story become a
alrighty, I think I'm back.
there we go. We lost you for a second. No, it's no problem. We'll just edit that bit out. So I'll just run that back a second. And so yeah, I think it's one of those where, at the moment you're at that stage where you're writing short stories, and all of a sudden 10 short stories, because they all lead on from each other, become a chapter. You write 12, 13, 14, you've got the beginnings of the fleshed out part of a book. Now, maybe your 10 stories in a line are a finished and closed chapter, and that's maybe a short book. Or maybe you take that idea and you expand on it far greater and rather than 10 episodes and people kind of knowing what the ending is. You go, yeah, but there was bits between episode 3 and 4 and bits between 5 and 6 that you didn't get to see, and let's explore those. I mean, for my own stuff, I did my 2 Trench Pilgrim episodes, and then all of a sudden I got onto this idea of a Witchburner being the in-universe investigator for us. So he's interrogated someone, and the first time we see Witchburner Nero for my series is if he's sending a letter to a guy because he's just interrogated someone about the Temple of Metamorphosis. And then he's talking about having fought the Path of the Beast the night before. Something happens. He then fights the heretic Nabian. An Acheronian wolf comes onto the field, or he sees something. So now he's writing about the monster that will live on. And I've got a couple of spin-offs and things, and I know where that narrative's going. It'll go to an unexpected place. And I think for me, and probably for yourself as well, as someone who has that creative ideas mind and is always jotting things down, you might know the end point of the story. You might not know exactly the ending yet, but you're on just as exciting a journey for discovering how we get there as the person putting the ideas down. There's the person listening to it. And I think, particularly in your work, it comes across as well thought out. It comes across as, well directed and well positioned. It's narrated clearly. It's narrated well. But there is a clear passion for the story that you are telling, and I think it resonates with a lot of fans. So it is something that I found personally quite enjoyable watching your content, and I think other people do.
And definitely been wild to. So the first story I wrote was like One Man's Fall,
yeah,
and that's over 100,000 views on YouTube right now, which is crazy. Like, that's nonsensical amount of views for something that I wrote myself. It's my story, it's my characters, it's my thing, and it gave us like Farouk, who's turning into an omnipresent threat within whatever little shared universe. Yeah, so he's gonna roll on back in Hand of Fate. He popped up early, and he'll be back because he's always messing with things, and he'll establish himself within those stories as well. So it's definitely a huge amount of fun, and had zero intention of that when I started. There's you can get away with so much in short stories, basically, compared to a long book. Like the peaks and valleys of a long book, I've basically gone through them already in the first 3 parts of Hand of Fate. That would actually be a pretty interesting book if I wrote it out, extended everything, and dived in deeper on the characters within that. But I don't want to. I want to move on to the next part. I want maybe the most fun way to look at Hand of Fate is as a synopsis of what might come down the line. I'm mapping out the story. I'm figuring out what I want to tell. There's things and concepts I want to introduce to my soft canon version of Trench Crusade, and this allows me to do so with a pretty solid level of investment in the characters, in the work, and then turn around and show Mike and be like, Mike, I'm going to say this combination of words, and if you have a problem with that, let me know now, because I don't want to mess anything up for them. I don't want to make their lives hard. I don't want to be disrespectful towards the work that they are doing and the world that they're trying to build. But I do want to play in the sandbox.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's back to that first part of the conversation, really. I exist in a fun place where people like what I do, which is great. And the easiest way for me to behave is respectfully towards the actual creators of this thing. I think that's very important, and that's something that I'm constantly trying to keep in mind when I'm creating stuff, right? Mike made the world himself, and James did the initial Kickstarter. Tomas comes in, they all start building it up. We all find that so inspiring, from the art to the lore to the rules and everything else. I start making my videos, you start making your videos. The next person I'll come across, it'll be your videos that inspire them to make videos. And because we're all trying to be respectful, the creators are being respectful of the audience, and as an audience, we in return are being respectful towards the creators of Trench Crusade. I think it's working well.
Yeah, I really want to do that with my own work as well, and be respectful to the verse. And I don't want to. So I put a while ago in the creators sort of Discord bit that we have, mentioning, well, does anybody think this is part of the lore? Because I really wanted to put it into a story, and it looks like it is, and stuff like that. So ultimately, I decided with that choice, and it may come out in a couple of months' time that Acheronian Wolves are nothing to do with Trench Crusade, but there's one in my story. And it was, for me, I like to celebrate the obscure bits of the lore and the obscure bits of what I see as Mike's work, because I don't think all of Mike's drawings, all of Mike's work will end up in Trench Crusade. I don't think it's something that, not everything will be in it, because Thomas has got to write the rules for it, and some stuff might not gel with how the lore goes, or they might take the lore in a different direction. The tabletop and the lore might diverge in terms of what is present in one thing and not in another. For the game balance reasons, I imagine, more than anything else. But yeah, I think going back to what you were saying about the creators seem very invested in giving people the creative freedom to do. Like, I see all the miniatures as a blank canvas, and I love the way that the miniatures are. They're not simple designs. They're not basic, but they aren't over designed and they aren't over decorated. I mean, you look at some of the Space Marine Lieutenants we've had over the years, or you look at some AOS minis and you're like, oh my God, how do I paint that? But then you look at something like the Iron Sultanate, and the Iron Sultanate are a very, very well-detailed faction. They're very small as well, but they're not that difficult to paint if you know a couple of basic things. And they are all blank canvas and free canvas things. And I like how the lore is like that as well. It's developing, it's growing, but I, and yourself as well, kind of want to be careful that we don't do something that goes against the lore narrative that the original creators are trying to tell. I wouldn't want to upset that sort of delicate balance. And I think for yourself, having that line to Mike and to asking those questions, you can strike that delicate balance much better than I could. I'd love to speak to Mike about it, but unfortunately, the man is incredibly busy, and fair play to him for being so, because he most certainly, as he said, yeah,
busy. And I've only ever asked him, I think I've only ever asked him 2 things, and that was it. And I feel like I obviously have a good connection to the devs, because I was there when there weren't many people there doing content, and I was there when I was happy to help out with the trailer and things of that nature, and just take little things off their plate maybe when they were incredibly busy in the run up to the Kickstarter. And I cashed that in almost never. I was there, I helped, it was great. And every now and then I might go, Mike, do you mind if I do a short story describing the formation of the Gates of Hell? Because that's a pretty big moment in the lore.
Yeah.
And sent him what I had wrote. And he was like, you know what? Go with it. This is pretty baller. It's not what he would imagine, but that's the point.
Yeah.
If I could just imagine what he would imagine, he wouldn't need to work. He could just sit back and pay everybody else to have his imagination.
Yeah.
That's not how it goes. But it's just a fun little piece of a story in the world of Trench Crusade. So I think the way I try to operate, and the way I would suggest other people try to operate is within the gaps between the pillars.
Yeah.
The devs are very clearly building.
Yeah.
It wasn't difficult for me to so the Temple of Metamorphosis is a really good example. There's not much out there lore wise, but there's very obvious themes and there's very obvious design philosophy. And the idea of changing and molting and all that kind of stuff is right there. So when I was thinking about them, it's like, if the goal is to change, then what's the catalyst? So maybe the catalyst is this thing, this door, to like move beyond it or move whatever's beyond it to us, or, you know, nebulous concepts. But as long as you're reasonably non-committal in what you think people are doing or seeing, and ultimately the important thing to understand is that most of these characters are in situations that they would barely be capable of describing.
Yeah.
Like Anton is never going to see black hole, which everyone has decided the doorway is, that it's a black hole, and he's never going to know what that is. He's never going to sit there and go, "It's a black hole. That look weird." He's just going to see this thing. He's going to have like an emotional reaction to it. Is what you're almost trying to describe. Kind of that spiritual horror of seeing something just completely beyond your own comprehension. That's where the fun is. And as long as you're doing that, you can have a lot of fun. So those wolves, maybe they don't exist in the world of Trench Crusade, but maybe something did like that for just a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like, I don't think hell has rules. I think there's all kinds of princes and archdemons and whatever who do any kind of weird experiment, who'd probably just unleash something on Earth for the laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you can have your fun there. And as long as you're not expecting the rest of like, I don't expect the rest of the Trench Crusade community to sit there and go, "Oh my God, Scanners decided this. That's fantastic." They should just enjoy they should enjoy the story while they're hearing it. And then that's it. Just move on and tell their own stories, do their own narrative campaigns, name their characters, fight with their mates, and tell their stories to each other.
Yeah, I think there's a very real... So we spoke a little bit earlier before coming onto the video, that I think there's a very real danger of people looking at your work and going, "Oh, he worked on the trailer, so he must know something we don't." Or, you know, I had Thomas on my podcast. I don't know anything different to anybody else. So my videos are not, if I speculate on something, that's my speculation. It's not, I don't know what's coming for the lore. I don't know what to tell you, really. If you want me to answer questions for the future of the game, the only people that can do that are Mike, Thomas, and maybe James for the sculpting side of things. But I think there's a very real danger of some fans coming into it, seeing the piece of work and going, "Well, that's obviously that's going to be canon because Scanner said it." And it like you say, it's a fine line to tread of choosing carefully the gaps between the pillars that the devs are trying to build and going, "Okay, well, maybe something like that maybe existed for a second and it's gone now because my characters in this story killed it. And there's no more need for that to be popping up in a later story unless the devs turn around and go, "Oh, this guy, this Farouk guy who's carrying this severed head of a Templar around with him, well, there's a little story in the lore of this and this that happened. And now there's an established thing that maybe this or this kind of character is existing." And then you can bring in your own, that back into your own stuff and flesh it out more. But, you know, I just want to caution people that we're not the people that are making the game. We don't know everything that's coming up. The only people that can answer that are the creators. So we're just having fun and big. And personally, for me, please don't speculate on anything I do because most of my stuff's fan canon stuff that's up here. It's not in anyone's creative mind who's making the decisions.
And ultimately, I'm in a because there is stuff I know. And the easiest way for me to hide what I do know and what I don't know and all the rest of it is just to simply say, I will never and have never and would never put something that wasn't due for public consumption in a video.
Yeah.
Just plain and simple. Like, the only time that would ever happen is if the devs turn around and said, we want to reveal something first on the channel, that'd be it. But other than that, I will always keep the devs' secrets for them. I don't have any interest in ruining that excitement that they will get to. Like, the most fun part about this entire process, and even in my day job, which is like the games industry stuff, the fun thing about knowing devs is seeing the excitement of putting something out there when they've got new art that's ready to go or new lore that's ready to go. The joy that they feel on those days of posting it on socials and letting the community see it and seeing all the responses and the feedback to it. Why would you want to deny that? People who work so hard on something.
I think the thing for me as well is that, and probably for yourself, I'm a massive fan of the thing that they're creating. Why would I want to do something that, you know, if I knew something that was coming up, why would I want to put that in a video, make my name mud with the people that have created this thing that I enjoy, and then they don't work with me anymore because I've let slip, you know, I've talked secrets. I love to speculate on things, and there's a little bit of speculation that myself and Thomas go into because in the podcast video that we did for the first episode, because he hasn't even written that lore himself yet, or he hasn't decided on things like that yet. So I like that healthy engagement in speculation and going, oh, I love that. I don't know what that is. Those things look weird. Why does some of the Path of the Beast stuff look like a wolf and some of it look like a bird? That's a bit odd. Is there a reason behind it? Are there more than one beast? You know, something like that. But it's all speculation and it's all fans coming up with fan theories and fan ideas. And I think people need to keep that in mind, that it's all new, it's all coming out, but even the devs don't know everything that's coming. So it's not like we're going to know anything more than they do. But
it's like an echo of the early days of 40K. So when I got into Warhammer, you had the codex of whatever race you were playing. That was it. If you wanted to know more lore than that, you were out of luck. There wasn't in Black Library, there wasn't any expanded universe stuff. It was just, you had your codex. That was it. When I was young, I had my Chaos Army, I had my 2nd edition Chaos Codex, and that's what I knew.
Yeah.
And anything else I made up, I imagined. I was playing Warhammer and I was into the you know, the world and the universe of 40K before there was a Horus heresy, for crying out loud. It didn't exist when I started.
Yeah, it didn't when I did, because I started in 3rd, and like Lehman Russ was a tank commander. He wasn't a Primarch. The Crimson Fists were the poster boy chapters, not the Imperial. The Imperial Fists were a second chapter of them, and now it's flipped the other way around. And I remember, like you say, I started 3rd edition just as 3rd edition was starting, so I got the Drakarian and Space Marines starter box from my brother. I got a few Eldar models before, and I was about 8 at the time. Well, yeah, I got models when I was about 8-ish, about 11-ish. 3rd edition comes out, and then because I'm a child with no disposable income, we just play games between me and my brother, and I have a bit of a hiatus from playing the game and stuff like that because he was my entry point into it. He's my access at the moment. And we only had stuff like the White Dwarfs were starting to come out with bits of lore, like the Necrons. The Necrons didn't have a codex for quite, I think, about 2 editions after they came out. And there were these evil Terminators.
One Friday, I came home from school one Friday, and there was a White Dwarf at my house because I had won a subscription.
Oh, yeah.
I'd won a subscription from Games Workshop actually for a year. and there was a white dwarf at my house, and I had a Egyptian-looking Terminator on the front of it in metal, a metal miniature, and they were like, "Oh yeah, these guys exist now," and I'm like, "Yeah." It was fun. It was wild, just going and learning things as they happened, and that's another reason why I like Trench Crusade, because it's not formulated, it's not congealed yet.
Yeah. That's what I like about it as well. I mean, like for me as well, the first time I saw the Thousand Suns, I went, I want to collect them. And Araman became one of my favorite characters just based off how he looked from being a kid. I don't engage with Araman's books that much because I don't like the narrative style of some of the audio books that they do, and I listen to a lot of stuff by audio through work. But Araman's still one of my favorite visual characters, stuff like that. I love the Thousand Suns, and all the backstory of him with Magnus and all that sort of thing. But yeah, this whole discovering things that was coming along was really exciting. And like you say, we just had an image pop up of here's a metal Egyptian Terminator he's got a weird looking gun, and he is a Space Marine kind of, but there you go, that's what you've got. And then the Necrons were the evil Terminator silent death kind of robots just popping out of the sand, killing everybody and going back in the sand. No one knew why they were doing it. No one knew where they came from, what they did. And then they started getting fleshed out and personalities later on. And then we got probably one of the funniest characters in canon at the moment, Trazen the Infinite, who just walks around stealing everything and has a panic attack when Orokin breaks a pot because he can't make it again. But because of how old those creatures are, you explore this weird existential dread of something that's so ancient and seen so much that it knows the finality of the thing that is happening, and it can't stop it, even if it's trying to reverse time and all that sort of thing and try and stop this pot from smashing. Ultimately, Orokin destroys something from their very home world on, the old home world of Necrons here, and it's lost to him now. You've lost that connection. And I like the idea that we'll start getting things like that for Trench Crusade, where maybe we'll see. So maybe I've got an idea of a Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent sub-faction, and I don't want to talk about it too much because I want to kind of flesh out my rules for it a little bit and then post it in the Discord, see if people like it. But maybe not every demon serves the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent. Maybe some of the warbands are a demon that's getting just enough power that it can start to get its mortal spark removed. So it's really dangerous for it to be out in the Levant, because if it dies, it's final, it's dead. And it's powerful enough to start commanding an army of its own, but it isn't an archdemon. It isn't a noble of hell, not just yet. But it's getting there, and it's got a bit of a sway, and it's got a bit of a following. So rather than being part of the court and following one of the seven deadly sins, maybe they follow a different path and a different sort of ideal set. And I'm toying with that idea, and I'll flesh it out with a bit of rules at some point, and hopefully people like it. But yeah, let's go back to the questions I got. So I've got a few things, from a couple of people that had sent in questions for us, and we are coming up to an hour, so we don't want to take too much of your time. But what's your favorite obscure part of the Trench Crusade lore? So like unexplored piece that you'd like to see more of? And then to dovetail in with that, would you like to speculate on what that might look like?
Yeah, so for me, it's Argos. I know a lot of people space program and things like that, but for me, it's Argos, because the place just vanishes, and I find that interesting. We know that people are always asking, like, where's God in this setting? Why isn't he doing something? Why isn't he saving us? I could do like a 2-hour talk just about that, so I'm not going to get into it. Yeah, but I kind of think it would be dope if God had taken Argos almost like an experiment.
Like a rap scenario sort of thing.
Yeah, like Rapture Trial in a way, and something about it didn't work. like the way he needed it to or wanted it to, because he's as bound by the covenant as the demons are. So I think it would be kind of fun if you had a surprise faction introduced that was the people of Argos, but they've been changed some way celestially. You know, they get returned and they're a little better somehow. They're stronger, they're faster, they're divine in an odd capacity. But that comes at
Like a holy demon.
yeah, that comes at a cost, because there's limits to what the human flesh can endure, which we see from the communicant program itself.
Yeah.
Right. They're not like, they ain't good looking at the end of those experiments and processes. They're all messed up. So that, like, dialed up to 11, I think would be pretty sick. That would be a really fun thing to do.
I think that would be a really good counterpoint to the Temple of Metamorphosis, like or even the Path of the Beast. You know, the heaven's gone, well, actually, we've got our own divine soldiers. Off they go, and they're a little bit more like the demons, where they have a spark of an angel, but they are from the opposite side. They're from the divine. So maybe they'd come back like looking a lot more human than a communicant, a lot more noble bearing to them, a bit like elves in high fantasy, but they'd have this much better ability, much better nobility to them, but they're all arrogant because of that. And I think that would be quite a good counterpoint, that they sort of appear as these super soldier people, but they're all arseholes because of it, because of the arrogance that would come with that level of power.
Yeah, I think visually I do them differently. I do them like super messed up, like,
Right.
you know, the way like biblically accurate angels have like 1,000 eyes and spinning things and all kinds of stuff. I would do them that way. I'd like, the human flesh would really suffer under its attempt at divinity, I feel.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it could be pretty, like, at the end of the day, it's just more body horror, but I feel like Trench Crusade is very much a body horror setting.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sorry, go ahead.
That just seems to be what Mike is into.
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on that really. I mean, I keep sculpting. Like, the worrying thing is when you start sculpting or designing body horror things, and you take a long, hard look at it and go, where did that come from? For me personally, what part of my mind did that crawl out of? Because that doesn't look normal. But they scratched that. Like, so I'll show you one here. Actually, I've got my body horror old One Eye from my Tyranids army, and I don't know whether you can see him properly there. But the reason why he's only got one eye is because this weird growth has grown over it. Yeah, that looks the whole idea of my Tyranids is that they're not like the normal hive mind. There's a parasite that's infested them, and they're a bit cordyceps and stuff like that, and weird things are going on. But when I sit down and look at my work, I think, wow, that looks amazing, and I really enjoy it. And then I sort of also take a little step back and I go, ooh, why do I enjoy that? That's a little bit worrying. Where in my own mind did that come from?
That's always been the fun thing about horror, especially I think horror cinema, where it gives people the opportunity to explore grossness without human cost.
Yes. Is to that sort of, well, what would happen? Like, you can't, you shouldn't and can't do that to sort of thing to a person, but someone will be thinking, what would it actually look like if someone got like divine powers? Would they be able to actually take it? Like, they'd probably be bigger, they'd probably be stronger, but maybe they're so big and they're so overpowered, they're so kind of bursting with divine energy that they end up like a communicant. There's a a monster of war, but it is a monster. Like it's I feel like Trench Crusade is very much one of those verses where it very heavily leans into that adage of you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. There aren't any good people. There are people fighting for good causes, and there's a lot of hope, I think, in that. And a lot of hope in Trench Crusade in terms of the good cause that is being fought for, i.e. they don't want creation to end. But none of them are heroes. None of them are good guys in a sense. They're the heroes of their own story. But everyone's doing messed up, wrong things. I mean, you look at a communicant, and how is that any different to, the war wolves that the heretic leader used? How is a communicant any different to the Path of the Beast bestial forms, or a shrine anchorite is similar in a sense to a desecrated saint. It's a person trapped within a torturous war machine form that, yes, he's fighting, at least in the anchorite perspective, and at least for the anchorites, it is fighting a good cause, but the creation behind that was nothing noble. And I think that's the odd and interesting thing about the setting. There's not a great deal of nobility in it. There's not a great deal of necessarily quote unquote good guys, but there are strong good guy themes and heroic themes in it, and also evil themes. So it gives people creative.
That is, if you boil down to the artistry. Now, I've never asked about the deeper themes and things behind Trench Crusade from the creators.
No.
Like, art is fun, and it's interesting, and it's open for discussion, and I like that. I don't necessarily want Mike or Tomas to come out and say, oh, this was actually inspired by XYZ. I know people latch on to the fact that it's about religion and get hyper focused on the idea that it's about religion, but it can also be about broader things, like broader power structures and things of that nature. And it's like you said, it's very easy within a self-supporting and a self-insisting structure to do these insane things. And what we consider to be heroic or moral or virtuous, even in real life, often exists and appears in culture and politics and the way the world works on a more individual level, rather than it's often people who book those structures that we consider to be the heroes of the moment. So I think about that a lot in Trench Crusade as well. It's an interesting world where it really boils down to intent.
Yeah.
More than anything else. If your intent is to save, then that's probably a good thing. If your intent is to damn to hell, that's probably a bad thing. It can be made, like very simple in that way. Where a lot of people seem to struggle is, I don't want this to come across as too judgmental. I really feel like there's people out there who think that were God to appear tomorrow, he would just make their lives better. Like if suddenly the existence of their particular God was proven, that somehow their lives would be better. But that's not true. And it's especially an odd one for actually for the Abrahamic faiths in general, where the idea is often that life is difficult. And if you live it virtuously and with faith in your heart, the reward comes after. So Trench Crusade Jesus isn't just going to show up and sort out your werewolf problem. He's just going to hand you a shotgun.
Yeah.
And you got to get down to business yourself. Like that's one of the more interesting disconnects I see in critique sometimes. People are like, but they know God exists and God doesn't help. It's like, in real life, you like the whole point of faith is that you know God exists, right? I like that's what I always felt whenever I was speaking to very religious people. They don't care what I think because to them God is real. So yeah, they've got it sorted on their end. Them knowing God is real for them doesn't like magically make all their lives better. They still have tests, they still have challenges, they still have to go through personal and physical and emotional and spiritual trials and pain and live a good life. So why do we expect it to be different in Trench Crusade? It's not going to be. That's why it's fun. It's like, how hard can things get? How strong can your faith remain? Yeah, it's going to get pretty damn hard, and your faith's going to have to be pretty damn strong. And then when you die, you'll get your place, hopefully, because they still can't figure out what God is trying to say to them because the synod sucks.
Yeah, sorry about that. Just had a quick phone call pop up that disrupted a bit of the audio there, so we have lost about a minute or two of me rambling on about something random. But yeah, I think I think with the synod they are so interesting in that they don't actually know. Like for me, the funny thing is that we know that the narration of Trench Crusade, at least from the timeline and all the stuff in the lore and rulebook, is biased and likely inaccurate. So how do we know that the synod are actually talking to God? Because they think they are.
That's why it's fun. They don't.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but
that's Keith.
Yeah, and it is about having the faith, isn't it? And it's about how faith manifests, and also how power struggles in the game and in the setting, and also in real life, mirror how a lot of the time it does come down to faith, like you said. And you may believe in a thing, and that is real to you, and sometimes that's all it needs to be, is real to you, whether or not someone disagrees with you or not. As long as you can have a healthy conversation about it and have that healthy engagement with it, and no one's putting someone down for a belief, or as long as that belief isn't directly aimed at causing harm or anything to other people, I think, yeah, we should be engaging with that healthy discourse around belief and things. And I think in the Trench Crusade verse, there's this whole thing of, well, there are, like you said, God's not just going to fix everything. And the militant Chrysolian, I think, probably would get stuck in the fight if he came back, because his name is the militant Chrysolian. So I've got to imagine that he had a fairly large suit of armor and probably a pretty big axe or sword or something, and probably messed up quite a few people before he went out. I don't think that crucifixion went down quite as simply for the crucifying sides in it. No, I don't think that one went quite as well for the people that crucified him, to be honest. I imagine that was quite a fight, and I'd like to see a bit more about that. But then, yeah, like even in the even in Christendom in Trench Crusade, no one can agree on anything. Like the wars of triclavianism happened because no one can agree whether or not Jesus was crucified with 2 or 3 nails. And then some people go, actually, no, this is yours. And then they start having an argument as well. And but in our own timeline, that caused arguments, and it caused some disgruntlement between the groups. In Trench Crusade, it kicked off a whole war, and multiple things happened, and there were ramifications to that I'm sure we'll see in the lore at a later point. Like, I think a nod to that, and my speculation is that the not the procession, yes, the procession of sacred ones, not the ones with the land, sorry, not the sacred affliction guys, the ones with the lands, the cavalcade of the 10th plague, that was it. There, I think the cavalcade are believers of something like the other side of the war of triclavianism, because they turn away from the teachings of the Metachrist and the doctrines of the Metachrist. They're Trench Crusade Old Testament, as it were, as it seems in their law. Yeah. And I'd like to see a little bit more about sort of the theories and the thoughts behind what their sort of side of things is. I don't play Cavalcade on a tabletop because I enjoy the tank hammer wielding Sacred Affliction guys, and how they can have just a nutter that believes in God so much that you can't kill him very easily at all, and he just wears rags and runs at you with hammers. That's quite a funny thing. I mean, but yeah, I'd like to see the different aspects of these arguments in Trench Crusade coming through. We know that the Sultanate doesn't particularly like the faithful factions in Christendom, because they kind of have a point that, well, you started this by opening the gate. It was your Templar heretics that kicked it all off. But we're on the same side, kind of. We're fighting for the same thing, and they become co-belligerents rather than necessarily fast and strong allies. And it's, I'd like to see a lot of lore coming from not necessarily Christendom itself and the Synod and the Church and the princes of the Church, because personally, I would like that to come later down the line. What I'd like to see first is the divergence to that, like a bit more lore on the Sultanate, a bit more lore on like the Cavalcade and their beliefs, because if we can see where they're coming from and where they believe that thing, when it comes to the reveals of what the main narrators, if we believe the main narrators are the Church, are concerned, we get a really interesting conversation to be had in the fan base. Because you as a fan might go, well, I really like the stance that the guys in this part of the world take, and I kind of believe what they're saying. And then somebody else goes, no, well, I think Papal States are right, or I think Prussia's got a point. And, we can have those interesting conversations in the lore and as the fan base as well, but no one's having those yet because we don't have the lore of it. And it goes back to that point you said earlier on, where everyone's on that journey together and we're all discovering it, and that's the exciting part. So, we mentioned earlier on about, your thoughts on Argos being sort of taken and maybe they come back as something a bit more divine, things like that. In my interview with Thomas, he mentioned Hebrew Knights and Crusader orders possibly coming for the faithful factions along with the Synod of Strategic Prophecy. So I was wondering, sort of, how do you think they might play or be different to what we've currently got? Have you got any thoughts or theories on what you'd like to see upcoming?
Interesting question. I would suspect that thematically, right, you try and lean into the themes, ultimately. So the Synod probably intel heavy for any fight that they get into. They probably don't start a scrap they think they're going to lose. So I wouldn't be surprised to see you can't infiltrate against them and they can infiltrate against you a lot. Infiltrate heavy, skirmish heavy troops, advanced positioning, and things of that nature. I would suspect to see in their list. And then we know they're up to some weirdness too. So like probably some dramatically divergent unit types to what we might be used to. What kind of shape that takes, I've no idea. Crusaders in my mind just kind of, maybe it's because I'm not particularly excited by Crusaders the way a lot of people are. Once again, there's a lot of Irishness occurring here. So Crusaders just kind of strike me as just tanky war wagons who like just roll across the table at you, and they're super difficult to remove because of all the augments and the battle drugs and all that kind of stuff. And I would have them as like almost like a meat grinder.
Yeah.
Just slow to get to you, but absolutely hellacious melee when they do. Like just very little you can do about it. If you do get trapped by them, they probably just absolutely brutalize you.
Yeah.
And then Hebrew Knights, that's super interesting because I have no idea where they might go. Because if you had turned around to me a year ago and asked me to predict what the Iron Sultanate would play like and be like, I wouldn't have guessed. Like I don't know many people who would have. So Hebrew Knights, will we actually see cavalry?
Yeah.
Do they potentially ride into battle on something far scarier? I think they might.
Yeah.
I mean, does a Hebrew Knight ride a horse, or does he ride a golem?
Yeah. Well, that's what Thomas was saying, that they are interested in the idea of golem rules and stuff like that. I think that the Hebrew Knights might play a little bit like court, and it's because he mentioned about the golems coming from Kabbalistic magic, which the Hebrew Knights wouldn't call it Kabbalistic magic and things like that. But I reckon they might have some sort of similar thing to Goetic powers, and have sort of elite units with Goetic power type things and manipulation. I think the Synod might be one of the only factions that gets rerolls and things like that, because we get that with the Observer already, with the Oculus Helm rules, that they can reroll some stuff because they see the future, so they kind of get a redo. So I think the Synod will play like a bit of a blend between Iron Sultanate and a bit of a blend between Pilgrims, in a sense that it'll be a bit faster, a bit more of a thought-provoking faction for the player who's playing them. They can't lock things down in a way like New Antioch can with turn orders and things, but they have positioning benefits. They have like dangerous melee units like the Lions of Jabir to Sultanate. What I think we might get is maybe you get like a 1 to 2 limit on the and maybe we get a couple of an observer special character, tacticians in support roles that give you rerolls, and maybe the Clava Signati, the papal key bearer knights, are kind of their heavy hitting unit, and something dangerous in that sort of thing. And then, I guess the Crusaders, I think they're just going to be absolute tanks, like you say. Very few of them on the board. Maybe they're the least unit heavy faction. Maybe we only get like 4 data sheets for them. Every one of them super impactful, high points cost in ducats, and maybe you get like a couple of serfs, like maybe an ammo serf and a weapon serf and this serf. You get like a couple of people that just run around giving them benefits and buffs and things.
Swords that they can throw at you. Something ludicrous.
One of the girls in my campaign group, she wrote some rules for a weapon serf. So the idea was that her knight faction she's writing, like the ammo monk, you'll get an ammo monk type sort of person in the army, and you'll pay, say for example, like their 30 ducat. Then you can load them up with a load of different equipment, so they don't have a weapon limit, but they can't use the weapons. They're not allowed to, because they're carrying them for their lord. So the knight himself starts with maybe a shield and a, but you're going into melee with something like a warwolf, so you need something like a tank hammer. Well, you do an action to swap it out, and you go, okay, well, I need your tank hammer. Go over to the serf, swap the weapon. The serf can then carry that weapon to another person, but now your knight who needs that hammer's got the hammer. Your knight that needs the sword's got the sword. Your knight that needs a rifle to take a long shot because he's got the line of sight, has got the line of sight shot. And the serf, can run around giving people that. But if the serf dies, you've lost all the weapons. So in the campaign, the serf might die out a lot easier. So he runs around doing all these things, giving people weapons. But if somebody pops him early, well, now for that fight, you've lost all your expensive weapons. Your knights are just stuck with what they were equipped with initially. And you've maybe killed your serf and lost yourself like 200 ducats of investment, because they're going to be a weak unit that can run around and give people stuff. But they're going to be just dead pretty quick if someone turns the gaze on them. I think that would be a really interesting thing. But again, it's speculation, and that's a fan homebrew thing in our group. I'd love to see something like that in the games. It does sound really interesting, but
Yeah.
it, like you say, if someone was to try and predict now let's go even further out and go, right, I think I will try and predict something like Path of the Beast. I've no idea. Like, Path of the Beast is probably going to be a melee faction, but who knows? They might have some sort of weird wolf thing with a massive gun in its face. We haven't seen that artwork yet, but there might be a really damaging, like, control faction or something. You know, like you say, to speculate now on what the rules might be or what things might be coming up, we can, and it'd be fun. But it'd also be
yeah, it's a huge amount of fun, but yeah, it's not something that I take tremendously seriously, and I definitely don't get married to any ideas because it's just too hard to know what. First of all, artistically, it's too hard to know what the team are going to do, and secondly, just realistically, there's barriers to the process, right? The creation of a game is one thing. The production of a product is entirely another.
Yeah.
So, you know, we don't deal with those issues on our end. We don't see those issues at our end. We just want things, which is that's the great part of being a consumer. You're allowed to just want things, and being a creator is more difficult because you have to make said things.
Yeah.
So, I don't envy the devs the situations that they get themselves into.
No, I don't envy them at all in terms of how they have got to kind of create this world, and it's a huge undertaking for such a small team. And you know, hopefully that team will grow with the success of multiple Kickstarters and things. And I wish them all the best and all the luck in the world. I've noticed that we're coming up to about an hour and a half on time, so I think we'll maybe close off with the last couple of questions if you're all right with that, and we'll try and
we'll do some rapid fires, will we?
Yeah, we'll do a couple of rapid fires. I think a good couple of quick fires. So, you mentioned about what do you think happened to Old Antioch? What blew that up?
I would say it's kind of an interesting one because there's so many, like, they've hinted that it's potentially atomic in nature, and it'd be kind of fun if hell got to that as a solution to problems before man did. But I also don't think that's really it, because there doesn't appear to have been a spoilage like afterwards, you know, regarding Fallout. They were able to like get back in there and start rebuilding pretty quick.
Yeah.
So I think they just had something show up that was pretty powerful, made it go nuclear on a goethic level, and for some reason they can't do that again. So I don't think it was purposeful.
I kind of disagree a little bit. Can you still?
Okay, but rapid fire. Disagree fast.
Did that fall second?
Nope.
All right, okay. So I think what could have happened is maybe it is a nuke. So I've got two theories. Theory number one: Hell made a nuke, but they're incredibly difficult for Hell to make. So they set it off, and we know there's a foul demonic essence in the area that still kind of persists. So maybe that foul demonic essence is Fallout. Now we also know in our own actual world history, to let's talk about that for a second, and I try to keep away from this as much as I can, is that in places where nuclear fallout has occurred, like Hiroshima, building and resettling that area was pretty quick after it happened. I think it was only a couple of years. And, 50 years after, I think it's 50 years after Old Antioch blows up, New Antioch is founded after the Sword Congress of Vienna. That's actually longer than in our own timeline, our own real world.
Yeah, that's true.
So it could be it could be a demon nuke. My other theory is that there was actually a paladin portal, and we spoke about this a little bit on your live the other day, when I popped in on the comment. Maybe there was a portal for the paladins to access hell there, but something went wrong with it. It blew up, killed the paladin that was using it, because we only know how Engelia died. We don't know how the other paladin that is said to be dead how he was killed. So maybe that's what it was. Maybe a paladin was about to use that portal. Something happened at the portal site and blew up old Antioch because the portal went wrong. Anyway, this was supposed to be a quick fire round, so we'll move on to the next. We ended up in wild speculation land, and I'll talk for ages. So, if you were thrown into Trench Crusade, which of the 6 current factions do you think you'd be part of, and why?
Oh God, none of them. I think they're all lunatics. I would be very happily in a small town somewhere in Central Europe, just not reading the newspapers. I mean, I honestly feel like the only realistic answer to give, if you end up in the world of Trench Crusade, what would you be? The answer is likely dead.
Yeah.
I would say it's just like, what would have killed you? For sheer irony's sake, it would probably be a werewolf assault beast because of my whole Clive thing. It would probably be what would take me out. But ultimately, yeah, probably join New Antioch somehow. Go through training, first deployment. That would likely have been the way my life went in the world.
Like a bit like the 20 minuters in Blackadder. Why are they called the 20 minuters? Yeah, I think I'd either, like yourself, I'd have probably got killed by the Black Grail. That'd have probably got me. So I'd either be some sort of like Black Grail zombie just wandering around, just not having a good time. Or I'd probably be a trench pilgrim just running around being a bit of a nuisance. Whatever got to me eventually would probably be something horrific. Like, I don't think a werewolf, because I think I'd see one of those and go the opposite way, fate or not. I'm going, that's too big for me. And I'd be out of here, going the opposite direction. Probably something like, I don't know, I feel like something sneaky would get me, like a bloody death commando. But it wouldn't because I was important enough for it to come after me. I'd just accidentally stumble into one and get bodied straight away.
I think I just killed on the way.
Yeah, like I was just some numpty that he found on the way to his target, and he was like, oh, Paul, you're dead. Oh, sound, I'm done. Then the last thing, last 2 things. Have you played much tabletop, and what's your favourite faction to play at the moment?
Heretics. I think even with the mommy change to just 1 per 1,000, I really like the Heretics. They're the ones I've played the most, and the ones that I always go back to that vibe, though. I like the fact that they can be whatever you need them to be in the moment. Like, if I want to be real killy in melee combat, I can be.
Yeah.
If I want to be real killy from afar, I can be. I like that. I like that variety that you can have in the lists, and you can adapt to your opposition, I think, just a little better than most of the other lists in the game.
Yeah. I feel like Heretic Legions are probably one of the most versatile and well-rounded of all the faction lists. I feel like Pilgrims are the second. I feel like it's probably Heretic.
Yeah, Pilgrims
are pretty versatile. Then it's New Antioch. And the one that needs a bit more rules support is probably like Black Grail and Sultanate. And I think
everyone says Black Grail.
Yeah.
I think Sultanate are in a good spot. I think they're very powerful at what they do, and I think that's fine.
Yeah, so I like in one-shot games, Sultanate and Grail are really quite powerful. But in campaigns, like I've heard some people talk about Grail losing support as they get a few games in, and like the glory points are kind of running out because we don't have a great deal to spend on. They also don't have a great deal of equipment. I'd like to see more of that. That'd be nice for them. The Sultanate as hell, I think they are out and out data sheet to data sheet, probably some of the more elite units in the game. But they don't have a great deal of support in campaigns either. They only have the one patron and stuff like that, and they don't have a lot of things in the glory section. I might be wrong. I haven't looked at the rules for the Iron Sultanate in a while, so it might be that they'd had new stuff added to their glory roster for the merchants, but last time I looked, they didn't have a great many. Next thing then, what do you think could be coming up for the Creature Caster collaboration, or what would you like to see from it? Because I think it's going to be weird, whatever it is.
I actually know exactly what's coming up for the Creature Caster, for the Creature Caster collaboration, and all I can say is I feel like Black Grail players are going to be extremely happy.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Like they will be very happy. It's different and interesting and fun.
Okay. Yeah, we'll end it out with a no comment on that one then, shall we?
Yeah, sorry, folks.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got my own. I'll call it speculation on what the Creature Cast thing is. But like yourself, maybe a little bit of information on it. And yeah, I think people will be happy with it. It's going to be weird, I think. I think it's going to be strange. But anyway, yeah, we are approaching an hour and a half now, and we'll probably edit a little bit of stuff out from when, I got random phone calls and stuff and things were disrupted. So it'll probably be just over an hour in length. Is there anything before you go that you want to shout out that you're working on that's coming up for you? Something that you want to tease that might be exciting to people?
I try to be almost to a fault non-committal on things because I never really know what I'm working on or what I'm writing or when I'm doing stuff right now. I will say that I'm incredibly appreciative of all the support I've gotten and all the people who watch the videos and sub and leave nice comments and have lore talks in the Discord and just generally like have fun. It's greatly appreciated. I do have, I think, some really cool stuff coming that I don't know if anybody's gonna necessarily be able to predict. So I'm incredibly excited for the next 12 months or so. If people want to like stick around that long and see how it all plays out, then that would be pretty sick. I think you'll like the results.
Nice. I look forward to seeing that. Thing from my own end, just to round it out a little bit, I'm working on something with some game developers. I'm not going to talk much about at the moment. I mean, I can. I'm allowed to publicize it a bit, but I don't want to, because what I'm going to do is start hiding like sneak peeks in videos. So maybe there's a miniature in the background somewhere. Maybe in this conversation, I'll edit in a very tiny snippet of like a couple of, pieces of their art. It'll just appear for a second to be gone. Maybe in the background, you might hear a whispered word of what the game might be. And that sort of thing. I want to start kicking off this investigative way for my viewers to see what's coming up for me. But I'll also be at Salute this year. Are you at any conventions?
No, I don't go to, like, I don't travel basically because of like health issues. So I'm a home bird.
No, makes sense. Well, with that then, I think we'll draw things to a close there. Massive thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. You're only the second guest that viewers will be seeing. So I don't know how I've done it to reach out to you guys so early, and you've been incredibly receptive to come on to here. Well, I can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough for the inspiration you've given me for my own short story series. And yeah, you've been a very supportive guy in our chat. you know, I couldn't speak your praise more highly. So thank you for coming on today, and thank you for everyone to watch. Thank you for everyone for watching. There we are, and we're done. Bye, guys.
Perfect.
See you later.